Let's talk Shubham, and he will tell us about incremental verification of neural networks.
Hello, everyone. I'm Shubham. I'll present our work Ivan that does incremental verification of neural networks. ML has many applications, and the current ML development cycle looks like this. We start with collection of data. We train a deep neural network using this data. We check this DNN if it is fast and accurate, and if it is, then we deploy this DNN. If it is not, then there are certain post-training updates such as pruning, quantization, fine-tuning, model repair, and then we deploy this model. This development cycle has one issue, that it does not guarantee DNN's behavior on unseen real-world inputs. And recent research has shown that these networks are prone to violations of these safety, fairness, robustness properties that are quite important. So we need more trustworthy development cycle. And for that, we need formal verification because it can symbolically reason about infinite set of inputs simultaneously and can provide those guarantees. However, we know that formal verification is expensive, and it can become bottleneck in this development cycle because we have to verify multiple properties on multiple networks, and every time the network is even slightly modified, we have to run formal verification from scratch. To address this problem, in this work, we pose this question: how can we reuse the DNN verification for the verification of updated networks? And we come up with this incremental formal verification solution that allows us to reuse the verification across these updates. The network updates that we consider, such as pruning, quantization, fine-tuning, they do not change the architecture of the network, but they only update the weights of the network. Now, before going into our algorithm, I'll briefly define the verification problem. We have this input region phi, which is the precondition. We have neural network n, which is the L-layered function. And we have this output specification psi, which is the postcondition. And the objective of the problem is this gray region, which is the set of all possible outputs, if it is contained in the green region, which is the postcondition. And the incremental verification problem is basically we verify neural network n, we take its proof, and we perform this fast incremental verification of this updated network NA. And this basically requires us to reuse the proofs of verification. In this work, we solve this problem, and we come up with this incremental and complete verification framework. Ivan is complete verifier, that it only halts when it either verifies the file property or finds a counterexample. It's not tied to a particular complete verifier, so it's a general verification framework that can be worked with any of the existing complete verifiers. And it gives a geometric mean speedup of 2.4x compared to the non-incremental state-of-the-art baselines. Now I'll talk a little about branch and bound, which is the most commonly used DNN complete verification technique. It involves two steps: bounding, where we use an efficient incomplete verifier to verify these partition problems, and branching, where we split the verification problem into easier subproblems. And the idea of branch and bound based verification is you iteratively perform bounding and branching until you verify all the subproblems and either find a counterexample or end up with a verification of the property. previous work has used different kinds of branching and bounding techniques, and our work, Ivan, is applicable to all of them. Now, moving on to Ivan. So the incremental DNN verification faces these two main challenges. One, we need to figure out which information to store and pass on when we perform this incremental verification. And two, we need to know how can we reuse this stored information efficiently for verification of the updated network. We'll discuss the first challenge. For that, we'll look at the execution of BAB-based verification. Our objective is to verify this property that precondition implies postcondition. And the first step is to use the bounding step, where we use the analyzer, which is nothing but an incomplete verifier, to try to verify this property. Suppose it cannot solve this problem. The next step is to partition the problem into easier subproblems. Often this is done by using this alpha, which is a linear constraint, and strengthening the preconditions. Again, we try to solve the problems using the analyzer. And suppose we solve one of the problems, we still don't solve one of the problems, and we keep recursively doing this until we solve the whole problem. Now, if we look at this execution of BAB-based verification, it always generates this trace, which is a rooted binary tree. And each node in this tree represents the specification of the problem that we attempted to solve. So this data structure that we defined, called specification tree, is what is the answer to our first challenge. And the next challenge is basically how can we use this specification tree for faster verification of the updated network. Note that the BAB-based verifiers that we consider, for most of them, the analyzer call is the expensive compared to the branching heuristic, and our goal is to minimize the number of analyzer calls that we make. Now, our first technique is called reuse, and the observation is that if you look at the specification tree, when we perform the original verification, the internal nodes of this tree represent the problems that were unsolved originally, and the leaf nodes of the tree represent the problems that were solved initially. Our main observation is that if the analyzer can or cannot solve a problem for original network N, then it can or cannot solve the problem for the updated network NA, given the similarity between them. So the simple idea is when we are verifying the updated network NA, we skip over the unsolved problems represented by the internal nodes, and we directly start the BAB with the leaf nodes of this specification tree. Now, generally what we observe is this BAB verification halts quite quickly when we start from the leaves, and we have to make fewer analyzer calls since we are avoiding all the analyzer calls for the unsolved problems from the internal nodes. Our second technique is called reorder technique. And for that, we revisit the branching heuristic that is used in the BAB verification. This branching heuristic, essentially, it's a scoring function that scores different branching strategies. And the efficient BAB verification basically picks the branching strategy that has the highest score among the strategies that are considered. Now, finding the most optimal branching strategy such that we have efficient verification is a very hard problem, computationally hard problem, and that's why we rely on these heuristics to solve this problem. However, our observation in case of incremental verification is that we can exploit the similarity between the original network and the updated network, and we can compute something called as these observed scores for different strategies that were used in the original verification. What this observed score essentially does is we prioritize the branching strategies that were effective in the original verification. We deprioritize the branching strategies that did not do well in the original verification. And we combine this observed score with our original heuristic, and we come up with this augmented branching heuristic edge delta. The idea is quite simple. We just take a weighted sum of H and H ops and get this edge delta where beta is the hyperparameter. Now, the two techniques that I talked about, reuse, it starts with leaves of the original tree, and it uses the original branching order. And the second technique, which is reorder, it starts with a root problem, but it has a better branching strategy. The problem in combining them is that they have conflicting order, and it is not quite straightforward how to combine them to get the benefits of both the techniques. So our third technique, which is part of our main algorithm, and I'll not describe it in this talk because it's more involved, but the essential idea is we come up with a prune specification tree, which becomes the starting point of our BAB-based verification of updated network. And that gives us the combined benefits of both reuse and reorder techniques. So this is the answer to our second challenge. And just to recap, this is what we set out for. We wanted to perform incremental verification such that we can be more efficient in verifying the updated network NA. And we have this branch and bound based verifier, which generates a specification tree T. And then we use the specification tree to compute the augmented branching order H delta. We compute this prune specification tree, and we use these entities to perform fast incremental complete verification. Now I'll move on to the evaluation. For the evaluation, we use two baselines, one B1 and B2. So B1 is basically we use this Gurobi-based LP verifier for bounding, and we branch on ReLUs. For the other baseline that we use, B2, it uses DeepC, and we branch on inputs. The verification properties that we consider are the standard properties used in neural network verification competition. We consider L-infinity robustness properties for MNIST and CIFAR10 networks, and we consider global safety properties for ACAS-XU networks. For the network updates, in this discussion, we use quantization. Our paper has results for other updates, ablation studies, hyperparameter sensitivity analysis, but I'll only result the subset of the main results here. The models that we use contain fully connected layers and convolutional layers, and they have neurons from 300 neurons to 10,000s of neurons. This table summarizes our main results, which is first column, the models that are used in the experiment. Second column is the baselines used in the experiment. Third column is the updates. And the final column is the speedup that we get compared to the state-of-the-art non-incremental baseline verifier. We see that the speedup ranges from 1.25x to 9.5x, and we consistently see speedup across all the benchmarks. Now we zoom into one of the experiments that is for this fully connected MNIST network. And here we plot individual verification of properties. On the x-axis, we plot the time for verification of these properties. On y-axis, we plot the speedup that we get in verifying these properties. The main observation across all our results is that Ivan is better at verifying harder properties. So if you see the box C1 that contains this property that takes 75 seconds, so it's relatively higher for the properties considered here. And we get 43 times speedup because it has a large specification tree, and there's more scope for optimizing that. There are certain properties where we even see slowdown, but generally these properties are properties that do take a small amount of time, and overall it doesn't matter even if we get some slowdown. But the essential observation across all the experiments is that whenever we perform, Ivan does better on these hard to verify properties. And for example, again, box C4 contains these hard to verify properties, and where we get significant speedup, and box C3 shows some properties where we do have slowdown, but again, it doesn't matter much in aggregation because those are they take less total time. Now, to summarize, we developed and complete incremental verification framework that is applicable to most of the existing complete verification techniques. In our previous work, we created an complete incremental verification framework that can work with this abstract interpretation-based incomplete verifiers. And we even observed that this idea of incrementality can be applied to these probabilistic verifiers as well. And I'm happy to chat about it after the talk. So in conclusion, we presented E1, which is incremental complete verification framework that introduces this data structure called specification tree. We use the specification tree we store the specification tree. We have the techniques reuse and reorder that allows us to efficiently verify the updated network using this specification tree. And we get a speed up to 9.5x on the benchmarks that we considered. Yeah, thank you. I can take the questions.
Thank you for the interesting talk. I was wondering if you've performed any ablation study comparing the speed up you get from just using reuse or reorder versus using both in combination.
Yeah, we did. It's in the paper. So basically what we observed is reuse and reorder among themselves are not comparable. So sometimes we see reuse technique does better, sometimes we see reorder does better. But overall, we see it's consistently that combining both of them together with this prune specification tree does better than both of them individually.
Thanks. And can you perhaps give some form of intuition on how you prune the specification trees, since the original specification tree, even only all the leaf nodes, should have roughly twice, or at most you should be able to prune as many nodes as you have leaf nodes if you prune all internal nodes. So speedups of a factor 43 seems really impressive.
Yeah, so to give you a very high-level idea, just imagine a best-case scenario where we have this branching choice, which was not good, and it resulted into everything becoming twice after that point. If you just remove that branching choice, you get 2x speedup. So if you remove even 5 bad choices of branching, you will get 32 times speedup. So it's very important that every wrong choice has a lot of consequence, exponential consequence, and just pruning them was quite effective.
Thanks.
I was curious to know whether you also looked at other type of edits like pruning, where you are making some of the weight zeros or something, as opposed to just quantization.
Yeah. So for the evaluation, we did not consider pruning here in this paper. We considered pruning in our previous paper, which was for incomplete verification. Here, the other update that we considered was random perturbation of weights, because that was kind of interesting for us to keep on randomly perturbing it until it breaks. Because if you see essentially a neural network, 2 different neural networks that have 2 different weights, one can say that one is obtained by perturbing the weights of the other network. And we don't expect really that the proofs should transfer across them, given that they are 2 different networks. So there is a breaking point where it doesn't work. And to do that, we considered these experiments which were randomly perturbing the weights, but we did not consider pruning.
Right. The reason I was asking that was because I can imagine if you are doing this pruning and your branching is based on ReLUs and so forth, that actually the proof trees may not be as similar, and maybe you might get different results. And then the other observation perhaps is, if you do still get speed ups even with pruning, then you could start with a very sparse network and keep making it unsparse. And if you're getting 43x speed up or something in your incremental, maybe that gives you a better sort of verifier, faster verifier, not even because of your incrementality.
Yeah, I totally agree. That's definitely possible. Yeah.
Thank you.
Any other questions? You have time. All right, let's thank the speaker again.